Good Friday morning. Welcome to Finding God in the Dark, and our regular review of another Coen Brothers movie. Uh, Evan. Uh, my name is Reverend Don Stevens. John?
Jonathan Campbell, pastor at Lacey United Methodist Church.
I'm Evan Dodge at St. Paul's Church in Brick. And Don, fortunately, their catalog is finite. So eventually we will watch them all. And you will never have to view another Coen Brothers movie again.
Yeah.
I Okay.
That was in his contract that every three movies is a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah, every third one.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
I'm just so that we keep folks informed. The film that we are talking about today is A Serious Man. It came out in 2009. It stars probably the only person I recognized ahead of time was Richard Kind. And then, as I watched the movie, like there were people that oh, hey, I know that guy. I don't know if like the main character, Larry Gopnik, is played by Michael Stuhlbarg. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Um,
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm watching him and I'm going, where do I know him from? Where do I seen him in some, and I went to IMDb and I pulled it up. Oh, he's Griff from Men in Black 3. Okay.
Yeah.
That's where I knew him from. And then, one of the rabbis shows up and it's Howard Wolowitz from Big Bang Theory, you know. So anyway, what else do we need to know about this? It's a Coen Brothers movie, produced, written, directed. Um, yeah. I'm now, as I recall, I'm the only one that had not seen it before, right? You fellas have both
Okay.
seen it.
Mhm.
So I'll give you my, bird's eye view take on it. Um, I do like to read a lot of stuff after I've seen the film. Like, what do other people say about it? What are they thinking about it? A lot of folks compare it to the Book of Job, which
Mm-hmm.
is obvious. I mean, you can see that comparison. But for me, I thought it was deeper than that. I thought there was more to it than that. Particularly in the fact that, other than in Larry's conversations with the rabbis, there's not really a lot of focus on God. Whereas Job is really, the book of Job is Job wrestling with God, sort of the back and forth conversation with God. This was more, I felt more like this was something akin to the Jewish tradition of Midrash, of just asking questions, like trying to find faith through asking questions. Um, I don't know. What's your take on it, Evan? This was one of your films. So what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. Um, I liked the parallels, and I thought it might be interesting too for us to engage in discussion, having just watched Schindler's List, right?
Mm,
And now this movie,
right.
Yeah.
how might they how might we view them together? How might they interact? How might they be different or
You kind of dovetail,
whatever?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I thought was interesting is, I mean, the parallel I think to the Job story are pretty obvious. Like in time he goes to those three rabbis,
Mm-hmm.
Job's three friends,
Yeah.
and they
Or
all
the
give what,
yeah.
as I think the last rabbi, like the senior rabbi, just like doesn't have time for him. So they don't really interact much, but
Right.
like he gets just talk about sort of a lack of pastoral sensitivity from the
Yeah.
first two rabbis. I mean, it's just kind of like Job's friends. What did you guys think of that beginning, right? Because the movie starts with like this 19th century Eastern Europe,
Yeah.
kind of this story, almost a parable, and it's a dibuk, right? Is that how you say
Dybbuk.
it?
Dybbuk, yeah.
Yeah. So this guy comes in right to the home, asks for soup, and uh, she stabs this guy, thinking he's a dibuk, and he bleeds and leaves.
Right.
How did you find that? Because it's not exactly tied in clearly for us by
Yeah.
the Coen brothers, how that relates to what comes after. So what did you think of that piece? How would you interpret that?
What I read was that the Coen brothers didn't specifically mean to tie it to the story, that they just wanted to start with some Yiddish fable of some sort, but they didn't have one of their own, so they made one up.
Mm.
Um I did also read that apparently when this film first came out in 2009 and it was reviewed by Roger Ebert, he tried to relate the Dybbuk story to the current story by saying that this was an ancient relative of Larry's, and the family was cursed because of the inviting the Dybbuk into their house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you could do a really low hanging fruit one and say that the spectrum of death is always kind of hovering over all of us, and so that idea of evil and death flows through all of life. And the book of Job and this movie, and when you were talking about other things you could connect it to, I thought about Ecclesiastes with this idea of life is hard, life doesn't make sense, that's life. And
Mm,
in a lot of ways, that's kind of the book of Job. I sometimes refer to the book of Job as a minority report. It feels like it's in conversation with other pieces of text in the Bible that talk about, hey, if you do the right things and you worship God and you're righteous, good things will happen. And the book of Job is kind of this response of, no, sometimes life is just difficult and hard for everybody.
yeah.
And that's a huge theme in Ecclesiastes, right? Is this kind of like, and you get that from the rabbis, is they all come in, he's searching for an answer, right? He's going to the rabbis so he can find an answer. They're closer to God. It's that pressure you feel as a clergy person when people walk in your
Right.
office like,
Right.
my life is falling apart, tell me what this means. And they respond with crap. Like they respond with basically, life is hard. They basically respond with, um, I've always liked this answer, but Dr. James Coen, who was a well known Christian theologian, said that when people ask, why do bad things happen? A Christian, that isn't the right question for a Christian. The right question for a Christian is, what can I do about it? And that was kind of the responses the rabbis gave, right? It was the what was it, Rabbi Scott? He goes basically, attune yourself so you can see God anywhere, like in the parking lot, like and then the second rabbi was basically like, I don't know, but do some good. It can't hurt. Like, so that
Mm-hmm.
kind of idea of we all want this one set answer, but the book of Job is about this idea. I mean, the book of Job is this beautiful piece of poetry, but it basically ends with God saying, you're not God, so you don't get to know everything.
Right.
Sorry. Like
Right.
that's the end of the book of Job. There isn't like this beautiful answer to why do bad things happen to good people. The book of Job just ends with, it's God. You don't get to know. Sorry.
And how often you mentioned that, when people come into your office and they're seeking answers, and how often do we just have to say the same thing?
Yeah.
I don't know. And
Yeah.
have to be comfortable with saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
And really more helping people to find those answers for themselves. Where do you feel like God is leading you? Where do you feel like God's drawing you or pointing you, or that sort of thing, rather than well, here's what I would do. Here's what what I think is right. Well,
Yeah.
what I think is right may not be right.
Maybe one of you knows, but there's a pastoral book about pastoral care that talks about the best pastoral care ever was the first week of the Job's friends. The first week they sat with him, and all they did was just sit and mourned with him. They didn't talk.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't ask questions. They didn't um, try to explain it. They literally just sat and mourned with him. And I mean, that's the basis of setting Shiva in the Jewish tradition is you
Right.
just go over to somebody's house and you're there. If they need to talk, you talk with them. If they
Right.
need to cry, you cry with them.
The
Um,
ministry of presence. Yeah.
yeah. So that powerful idea of um, we often think we have to have the answers, but we usually get in trouble when we try to answer someone's suffering. The
Right.
best thing to do is literally just go, "This sucks. I'm sorry. Let's talk."
Yeah. And literally have done that. Like I mean, I won't tell the whole story, but I did that with when I was youth pastor in Woodbury, and we were on a mission trip, and this, one kid from the group was just, there was a lot of stuff happening in his life with his brother and things like that. And I just said to him, dude, some days life just hands you a platter of crap and you got to eat it. And tomorrow there's going to be another one, you know. But God promises that there's better coming, that something better is coming. And so, sometimes we gotta walk through the tough stuff, you know. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I also felt like there was this really interesting arc in the film. Now, I have to say, when the film went to black at the end,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
I sat there going, and and it took
Right.
me a minute to
Yeah.
realize that now I have the unanswered questions, sort of like Larry had through the whole
Yeah.
film, like, now what? What's next? But it was interesting to me that the arc that developed there was that, Larry throughout the film was trying to do the right thing. He's trying to do what's the best thing, what's the best thing. And then the moment that he decides to do something that was not the right thing, changing the grade for that student and taking the money, he
Mm-hmm.
gets a phone call to come in and talk about his x-rays,
Yep.
and then
Yep.
his son is locked outside the school with a
With
tornado
the
coming.
tornado. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is the tornado is a clear allusion to Job too, because in
Right.
Job, his family gets taken away by a tornado, gets
Right.
destroyed.
Right. But it's like all of a sudden, like, he went, all right, I'm going to do the thing that works for me.
Yeah.
And, the moment his selfish side showed up, things turned, you know, it
Well,
was
it's
good.
that, sorry, that's that universal thing that people of faith struggle with is do we do the things we should because they're the right things, or do we do the things we should because we think we're going to get some reward?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
like, I don't know if you ever had a conversation with somebody who like finds out that some Christians don't believe in hell, and they'll be like, but why would you do good then? And you're just like, because it's the right thing to do.
The
Like,
right thing to do.
but yeah, that struggle of why, what motivates us,
Yeah.
is what motivates us the idea of punishment, or is what motivates us the idea of just doing something that's good and helping build, in Christian language, helping build the kingdom, like.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had that, I've had that very thing happen. See if I can condense the story a little bit. Years ago, I used to meet with an accountability group of 3 other clergy. And one of the things that we decided among the 4 of us was that whenever somebody came to our church that was coming from another Methodist church, that we would always call that pastor, right? Like, we're going to call them, we're going to say, hey, and it was because we had seen the example of another Methodist church in the area that would just, people would go there from our churches and we'd never get a phone call. We never knew why. They'd just go there, and they'd stop coming to our
Mm-hmm.
church. So we said, we're going to call. If anybody comes to our church, we're going to call. And in a previous appointment, it wasn't in this church, we got a visitor card in the pew one day, and the person listed on there that they were from another Methodist church. So, when my lay leader handed me the card, I said, oh, well, I know what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to call a pastor. Why are you going to do that? Because it's the right thing to do. Not because it's the right thing. That pastor needs to know that somebody's coming here, that maybe there was an issue. If the pastor knows they're coming here, that's fine. And they want to be here, that's fine. But the right thing to do is to let them know, let the other pastor know. So, and that's what, my lay leader said, well, they could call and patch things up. Yes, that would also be the right thing to do. I don't know. It's challenging, right? I don't know, Evan, we're talking a lot. You're not talking much, so.
That's fine. How do you see this movie in light of having watched Schindler's List?
It's interesting. I was actually thinking about that because I thought it just kind of reflected on the fact that we watched two movies back to back that were about the Jewish experience in a lot of ways.
Right.
And I don't know why, but Elie Wiesel came to mind, who's a well-known survivor of the Holocaust.
Right.
He survived Auschwitz. If you've never read Night, it's worth reading. Make sure you have something happy to do afterwards because it's a hard read. But
Right.
he does a trilogy about that experience, and the second book of the trilogy is a play he writes about basically people in Auschwitz putting God on trial.
Yep.
And they put God on trial about basically why God would allow the Holocaust. And long story short, at the end of the play, they decide that God is guilty, that God should have acted, God should have stopped this. And then it ends, though, with the rabbi going, okay, it's time for prayer. And everyone goes to pray. And it's a beautiful statement, just like this movie is trying to do, is sometimes life doesn't make sense. It doesn't mean we stop asking questions. It doesn't mean we stop believing in something larger. It doesn't mean that we stop believing there's a God. And that's the point of the play, I think, is even though everybody recognized what was happening was horrible, wasn't right, and that God, as being all powerful, should have stopped it, they're not going to stop being in a relationship with God. They're going to believe that there's something bigger that they don't see yet. And I think that's part of this movie is this idea that, the fact that this wise rabbi that Larry is going over and over again trying to reach, he's trying to get it, he's going to try to talk to the guy who's closest to God, right? In kind of this story. And the guy closest to God, the interaction we see is with Larry's son meeting the rabbi after his bar mitzvah, and the rabbi quotes Jefferson Airplane
Right.
back to the kid. The song that he was listening at the beginning of the movie got in trouble for. The rabbi, quotes it back, and so it's this kind of beautiful statement. At least that's how I read it. Is that God is in life? You just got to look for it. God.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, wow, that's kind of the whole point of this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Gods and culture. Yeah.
This is what I keep telling folks, when I mention the podcast and they go, you do a podcast? All right. You look at the church's Facebook page, it's there every week. But yeah, now see, I had to say, like, I honestly I wasn't kind of thinking of connections between Schindler's List and this film.
Yeah.
Not at least not intentionally. I don't know, Evan, was there something there that struck you?
No, not particularly. I thought of that yesterday, that like we watched Schindler's List and now we're watching this, which is I think in many ways, as we've identified, a retelling of Job, but it's that and more, I think.
Yeah.
The film. And today being the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Like
Right.
just this whole kind of this as Jonathan, I think, aptly put it, the Jewish experience is just kind of swirling around us. Just kind of looking for points of connection.
Well, and the Coen brothers actually, the Coen brothers actually, with this movie, are doing what I would argue Scripture is supposed to do, which is Scripture isn't about giving us the answers. Scripture is about helping us ask really good questions.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what this movie does with the text, playing with the text, and then engaging with life around the text, is it asks those deep questions, and it doesn't give this pat answer, but it invites you into the possibility of struggling with it yourself. And that's what scripture does. Is it, that's why it's so important for us as a community to get together and read scripture together and talk about scripture, because it's not about finding this pat answer. It's about creating these questions that will lead us in the right path. I mean, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what this movie does, is it leaves you with really good questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that communal engagement with the questions,
Yeah.
which is very much a Jewish and Christian practice. And
Yeah.
you see that in this movie, don't you? Like when something comes up to him and he's trying to make sense of why something has happened, either to him or to someone around him, he goes to others and he asks questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Interesting. I don't know
yeah.
if you guys use the breakthrough resource from the conference, but we started the On Purpose series recently, and the first week is about asking questions, and I had each church, the people in each church at the end of the sermon, we handed out like index cards, and just asked them to write down one question they had for God. Right. Now that was the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. So I didn't get to those questions until Tuesday to even look at them. This is the stack of questions that I got
That's awesome.
between the two churches. And I tell you that Tuesday morning, this is from the one church and this is from the other. I sat here at the desk that Tuesday morning and read through those questions, and literally it's just wept. Because their question, I've done similar sort of things before, particularly like if I'm trying to put together a sermon series, and so questions we ask God and you ask him, and then, you turn it into a series. But I wasn't planning to do that with these, still not planning to do that with these. But when I've done it before, I've gotten sometimes as many as half the cards back, just blank, because people didn't really take it seriously. This, between the two churches, I got exactly 2 blank cards back. And I got one card that was like somebody put a math question on there, that kind of thing. Like, I'll get you. This is a tough question,
That would
but
get me.
most of
I can't do math.
it looked like one of those questions that was on the board behind Larry in the classroom. But mostly they were just really honest, heartfelt. They took the assignment seriously, and it just made me realize how seriously these folks take their faith, and I think that's awesome, to get that kind of feedback without even really knowing that you were getting it, right? So now I sit with these on my desk and I go, okay, now what am I going to do with these?
Yeah.
Because wow, there's some
You can weave it into your church year. About every other week you'll do a question for.
well, I figured there's a few where there's, if there's like recurring themes, then that's obviously something to teach and or
Yeah,
preach on,
absolutely.
but like this was the math question. If anybody knows that one, there you go.
Show that again.
No.
I can't. That just looks like a bunch of.
I could show
hieroglyphics.
Nathan. I could show Nathan. He's really into physics. I can see if he could.
It's I
Oh,
don't
for
think it's
goodness
actually
sake.
a math question.
Yeah.
I won't tell you on the recording
Yeah.
about but I have background on it. So
Okay.
Looks like ancient hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
all right, fellas, that's that's quite a film, Evan. So far, what you've given at least me, I haven't seen
All
these
right.
Coen Brothers films.
So here's my question for you, Don. So we
Sure.
watched The Big Lebowski, Barton Fink, and now A Serious Man. How would
I've
you
seen
rank them?
Fargo. I've seen No Country for Old Men. I've seen parts of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Okay. How would you rank the 3 that we've looked at so far on this podcast?
What do you mean rank?
Just in which you thought were impactful, meaningful, however you want to rank, how you would determine that whether they were your
Okay.
favorite or
Yeah.
not.
Well, as far as preference, I like this one better. than the other two. I definitely found more meaning in this one.
Okay.
I would say that um, more than the others, Barton Fink confused me a lot. It was one of those where I was like, "What is going on in this movie?" Which I've done before. I mean, there have been times, but if you ever watch Annihilation, most of that film, you go, "What?"
Yep. Yep. Yep.
But so yeah, I mean, Lebowski was fun just because it was very irreverent, um, very different, not what I expected at all, but not bad. Uh, that was more like a comedy of errors kind of film to me. Um, so I don't know.
Cool.
Take it, brother. I'm not. Doesn't make me the rabid Coen Brothers fan that Evan is. Not yet, anyway.
I wouldn't say I'm a super. I enjoy their films.
Uh-huh.
There's a couple other directors that I would say I'm a rabid fan.
Okay.
But I do like the Coen Brothers a lot.
Well, I have grown to appreciate at least the ones that I've seen so far. So I'll give you that. Now we have to move on to what we're going to watch this week. Now we did get the door cracked open just a little bit for Jonathan last week. Insofar as he hasn't seen very much in the way of anime.
You
Like anything at all, or just not much?
not much. I've seen a little bit because my son Nathan likes it, so I've
Okay.
seen some things, but not a lot.
So you familiar with Hayao Miyazaki?
I know of him. I don't know if I've ever seen one of his movies. I know of
Oh
him.
wow.
His
There's a rich field right there, Evan, right?
It's good, but wouldn't it be Jonathan's turn to pick a movie? Because I think you picked Schindler's List, and then I picked A Serious Man.
Well, if Jonathan want to challenge us, that I'm up for that. However you guys want to do it.
Okay.
Do you guys both have Netflix?
Yes.
Okay, so on Friday, The Killer is coming out on Netflix, which is a Richard Linklater movie.
The Killer?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a dark comedy.
Okay.
Um,
You'd be doing a lot of those.
yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
So I have never seen it. Obviously, it comes out on Friday. So what do you think about something like that? Or do you like to do older movies?
No, we'll do. There's not really a parameter as far as old, new. I mean, look, you and I talked about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, so that's still in
Okay.
theaters, right?
Yeah.
Everything from we're basically trying to look at films that at least one of us hasn't seen before.
Okay.
So I'm looking at Netflix on my phone right now.
Yeah.
What's the movie?
Killer?
The
The
Killer.
Killer?
Oh no, I'm sorry, The Hitman. I'm sorry.
Hitman.
Oh, The Hitman. Okay.
Sorry. There's actually
All right.
a movie recently came out by a different director.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael Fassbender's in it. That was a good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So does that sound good? Or I have another suggestion if you don't want to go with that one. So
No, that'd be fine. When's it come out? Friday?
Friday. Mhm.
Okay, so for those who are watching today, but it's not today when we're filming. Well,
yeah.
Evan already gave away what day it is when he said it's D-Day.
Just a little Googling.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Early.
It's not Friday. All right, well then good. We'll
after.
We'll watch
it was the day after.
What's that?
He meant it was the day after D-Day.
It's the day after D-Day.
Right. It's Friday. For all those who are watching at home on your phones, it's Friday. It's not Friday when we're recording. Yeah. Anyway, so it's called The Hitman, you said.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix. I don't see it, but obviously it's just going to show me what's out right now, not what's coming, right? um, movies. Yeah.
Cool.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
look
we
forward to
will
that.
absolutely we can watch that. So that'll be fresh for all three of us then.
Yeah.
And then
Hopefully
that's
you like Richard Linklater movies.
What
okay.
else has he done?
Before Sunset, the Before Sunrise series is, and then Dazed and Confused is probably his most
Oh
famous.
yeah,
Days
sure.
Confused. Okay. I know that one. All right,
Oh, I'm
gentlemen.
looking at him.
So
He
we
did
are
School of Rock. I love School of
Yeah,
Rock.
School of Rock is awesome. Yeah,
Oh yeah, okay, cool.
okay, we're good.
yeah.
All right, good. So that's going to be all for this week, folks. We thank you for watching. I'm going to encourage folks, and I don't do this a lot, but I know some people have told me like, well, I missed this episode or I missed that episode. So if you want to make sure you don't miss the episodes, follow along below, leave a like, subscribe, those things. You'll get more of this content if you do that. If you find this interesting. Personally, I find it great. I mean, I thank you fellas for doing this because I could talk about movies by myself, but it's much more interesting to have, to have some inputs. So thank you, gentlemen. I'm thoroughly enjoying this. And we will see all of you next week. Until next week, keep on finding God in the dark. We'll see you all then.